Hello there. How are you tonight? Before we begin, gently dim the lights, get comfortable, and allow the quiet of your surroundings to slowly settle around you. Tonight's journey is best experienced in calm and stillness, and if you enjoy these slow, slightly mysterious stories from the past, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. So there's always another relaxing history story waiting for you when sleep feels just out of reach, and let me know in the comments. Where are you watching from tonight? It's always fascinating to see how many different parts of the world gather together to listen to these quiet stories from the past. Now, imagine living a life of absolute power. Surrounded by golden treasures, towering monuments, and endless servants, a life where you are not just a ruler, but believed to be a god walking among mortals. This was the world of the pharaohs of ancient Egypt, but beneath the beauty of pyramids and temples, there was another side to this life, a life filled with pressure, isolation, rituals, and an ever-present awareness of death, from the moment a pharaoh took the throne. Their life became carefully controlled, shaped by tradition, expectation, and the fear of what awaited them in the afterlife. Tonight, we will slowly explore the hidden and often unsettling realities behind the lives of these powerful rulers, so relax. Take a deep breath, and let's quietly step into the mysterious world of the pharaohs. The air is warm, heavy with the scent of incense and desert dust. The sun rises slowly over the horizon of the Nile, casting a golden glow across temples, statues, and endless stretches of sand. Everything feels still, almost frozen in time, and at the center of it all lives a man who is not seen as a man. He is the pharaoh. To his people, he is not simply a ruler. He is divine, a living bridge between the heavens and the earth. The gods are believed to speak through him, to act through him, to watch the world through his eyes, but this belief comes at a cost. From the outside, the life of a pharaoh appears almost unimaginable. Vast palaces filled with polished stone, walls painted with scenes of victory and eternity, pools of still water reflecting columns that stretch toward the sky. Servants move silently through the halls, never meeting his gaze unless permitted. Every movement around him is careful, deliberate, almost rehearsed. Nothing is accidental in the presence of a god, but within these grand walls there is a quiet tension, because a pharaoh does not simply live, he performs. Every gesture, every word, every moment of stillness is part of a role he can never escape. Even as a child, if he is born into royal blood, he is watched closely, observed, guided, molded into something more than human, or perhaps something less. He cannot laugh freely like others, cannot wander without purpose, cannot speak without meaning. Even his silence carries weight. There are eyes everywhere, advisors, priests, servants, all watching, all interpreting, because if the pharaoh is truly a god, then every action must hold divine significance, and if it does not, then something is terribly wrong. As the sun climbs higher, the palace begins to awaken. Soft footsteps echo through long corridors. Linen garments brush against polished floors. The faint sound of distant voices hums like a quiet wind. The pharaoh is already awake. He does not rise when he wishes. He rises when he must. There are rituals waiting, duties that cannot be delayed, expectations that cannot be ignored. His day is not his own. It never has been, and it never will be. Outside the palace walls, the people begin their lives. Farmers walk toward the fields. Craftsmen prepare their tools. Children run along the dusty paths, their laughter light and unburdened. They look toward the palace with awe, with reverence, with faith. To them, the pharaoh is perfection, a protector, a provider, a divine force that keeps chaos at bay. But they do not see what lies behind the stone walls. They do not feel the quiet weight that follows him wherever he goes, because to be seen as a god is to lose the freedom of being human. There is no room for weakness, no space for doubt, no comfort in solitude, even in the quietest moments. When the palace sleeps and the torches flicker low, The Pharaoh is not alone. There is always something watching, the gods, or at least the belief in them, and that belief is powerful enough to shape every breath he takes. As the day unfolds, he will sit upon a throne that symbolizes eternity. He will hear voices that expect certainty. He will make decisions that ripple across an entire civilization, and yet, somewhere deep within him, there may still be a question, a quiet, unspoken thought. What if he is not a god? What if he is simply a man? Trapped inside a role that cannot be undone, the wind moves softly across the desert, brushing against the towering monuments built to honor rulers long gone. They were once like him. They sat on the same throne, breathed the same air, carried the same burden, and now they rest in silence, their names carved into stone, their bodies preserved for eternity, waiting, watching, remembering. And as the Pharaoh begins another day in this carefully controlled life, the same path slowly unfolds before him, the path of power, of isolation, of expectation, and of something far more unsettling, a destiny that has already been written, but not yet understood. The story of a pharaoh does not begin on the throne, it begins much earlier. In quiet chambers, behind thick stone walls, where whispers carry more weight than spoken truth, because in ancient Egypt, power was never simply given, it was prepared for, shaped, and sometimes taken long before the crown touches the head. There is a life of careful observation. If the future pharaoh is born into the royal family, his existence is watched from the very beginning. Every movement, every reaction, every small sign is noted by those around him, not with affection alone, but with expectation. He is not just a child, he is a possibility, a continuation of something far greater than himself. In the early mornings, while the palace still rests in silence, the young heir is already awake, guided by tutors, priests, and royal advisors. He is taught not how to live, but how to rule. He learns the language of the gods, the sacred symbols carved into temple walls. He studies history, not as stories, but as instructions. Each past ruler becomes a lesson, each success something to repeat, each failure something to avoid. There is no room for ignorance, because one day he will carry the weight of an entire civilization. But knowledge alone is not enough. He must also learn how to be seen, how to sit, how to speak, how to remain still when needed. Even his posture is practiced, even his gaze is controlled, because a pharaoh is never simply observed, he is interpreted. Every expression becomes a message, every silence a decision. And yet, not every pharaoh is born into certainty. Some rise through far more uncertain paths. There are moments in history where the throne is not passed gently from father to son, but claimed through tension, conflict, and quiet ambition. A general returning from war, praised by the people, an advisor whose influence slowly grows too strong, a distant relative, waiting patiently for an opportunity. In these moments, the palace becomes something else entirely, not a home, but a place of strategy. Behind closed doors, alliances form like shifting sands, conversations are held in low voices, words chosen carefully, meanings hidden beneath politeness, because power, in its purest form, is fragile. It must be protected or taken, and when the time comes, the transition is rarely simple. A pharaoh may pass peacefully, leaving behind a clear successor, or the moment may arrive suddenly, unexpectedly, a death that raises questions, a silence that feels too heavy, a throne that becomes empty. Even if only for a moment, and in that moment, everything changes. The palace grows quieter, but not calmer. Servants move more carefully, advisors gather more frequently. There is a tension in the air, like the stillness before a storm, because now the question is no longer when, but who. The rise of a new pharaoh is not just a political event, it is a transformation, a moment where a human being steps into something irreversible. When the chosen successor finally stands before the throne, the world around him feels different. he is no longer being prepared, he is no longer being observed, now. He is the center of everything, the coronation is grand. But beneath its beauty lies something far more powerful. Priests chant ancient words. Their voices echoing through vast temple halls, sacred oils are placed upon his skin. Symbols of purity, of divinity, the crown is lifted. Slowly, deliberately, and placed upon his head. In that moment, he is no longer just a person, he becomes a living symbol, a god. In the eyes of the people, but something else happens too, something quieter, less visible. The moment the crown settles, a door closes, not in the palace, but within him, because from that point forward, there is no return, no stepping back into anonymity, no freedom to simply exist. Every breath, every decision, every thought becomes part of something larger, something permanent. The people celebrate. Outside the palace, the streets come alive with energy. Voices rise in praise. Offerings are made. The air feels filled with hope. A new pharaoh means renewal, the continuation of order, a promise that the world will remain as it should be. But inside the palace, the atmosphere is different, quieter, heavier, because those closest to the throne understand something the people do not. They know that becoming a pharaoh is not the end of a journey, it is the beginning of a far more demanding one. As the celebrations fade and the sun begins to set, the new ruler finds himself alone for the first time. The crown still rests upon his head, the weight of it. Unfamiliar, uncomfortable, real. He looks around the chamber. The walls are the same, the air is the same, but everything feels different, because now, every choice he makes will shape the lives of thousands. Every mistake will echo far beyond these walls, and every moment will be watched, not just by people, but by something far more silent, far more patient. The past, the pharaohs who came before him, still exist in the shadows of this palace, in the carvings, in the statues, in the long, quiet halls where footsteps seem to linger just a little longer than they should. They were once where he stands now. They felt what he is beginning to feel, and they all followed the same path, whether they wanted to or not. As night falls over Egypt, the palace grows still once more. The torches flicker gently, the distant sounds of celebration fade into silence, and somewhere, deep within the mind of the new pharaoh, a quiet realization begins to form. Rising to power was only the first step. What comes next is something far more difficult to escape. There are moments in history that feel almost unreal, moments where power, responsibility, and destiny are placed into hands far too small to hold them. The palace is quieter than usual, not peaceful, but restrained, as if even the walls themselves understand that something fragile now sits at the center of it all. A child has become pharaoh. He does not fully understand what has happened, not yet. He knows the faces around him have changed. Their expressions more careful now. Their voices softer, yet more controlled. They bow lower, they speak slower, they watch him more closely than ever before. But to him, the world still feels confusing. The corridors are still too long, the ceilings still too high, the shadows still too deep. He remembers simpler things, the feeling of running through open courtyards before someone called him back, the quiet laughter shared with servants who were once less cautious around him, the moments where he could simply exist without meaning. Those moments are gone now, replaced by something he cannot yet name. In the early hours of the morning, he is gently awakened, not by a parent, not by comfort, but by duty. Hands carefully guide him from his resting place. His garments are chosen for him, fine linen, adorned with symbols he does not yet fully understand. Gold rests against his skin. Cool and unfamiliar, even the air feels different. Heavier, he is led through the palace. The same halls he has walked before now feel distant, unreachable. Servants lower their gaze as he passes. No one speaks unless spoken to. No one smiles the way they used to, because he is no longer just a child. He is something else, something they must not treat lightly. When he reaches the throne room, The space feels overwhelming, vast pillars rise like silent giants. Light filters in from above, casting long, unmoving shadows across the stone floor. Everything is still, everything is watching. He is guided to the throne. It is too large for him. His feet do not quite reach the ground. His hands rest awkwardly on its edges, and yet this is where he must sit. Voices begin to speak. Advisors, priests, officials. Their words are calm, respectful, but filled with meaning. Decisions are presented to him. Questions are asked. Choices are expected. He listens, but does not always understand. How could he? He is still learning what the world is, let alone how to shape it, and so he looks to those around him, to the ones who stand closest, the ones who speak with quiet confidence. They guide him, gently, carefully, but always with purpose. Because while the child sits on the throne, the weight of power does not disappear, it simply shifts. Behind the scenes, the palace becomes a place of quiet influence. Advisors begin to shape decisions. Priests interpret the will of the gods. Voices compete, not loudly, but subtly, each one trying to guide the young pharaoh in their own direction. And the child, he begins to notice, not everything, but enough. A pause in a conversation when he enters, a glance exchanged between two figures, a suggestion repeated just a little too often. There is something beneath the surface, something he cannot yet fully see, but he can feel it. At night, when the palace grows silent, he lies awake, the world around him finally still, the expectations momentarily distant, and in those quiet moments, he is just a child again. He thinks of questions he cannot ask, of feelings he cannot explain, of a life that changed too quickly, too suddenly. He wonders, why him? But no answer comes, only silence. Days turn into routines, carefully structured, carefully controlled. He is taught more intensely now, not just history, but responsibility, not just language, but meaning. He learns that he is not just a ruler, he is a symbol, a living connection between the people and the divine, and slowly, that idea begins to settle into him, not as belief, but as expectation. He begins to sit straighter, speak more carefully, observe more than he reacts. The child begins to fade, and in his place, something else begins to form. But it is not a simple transformation, it is not complete, because deep within him, the child is still there, still questioning, still uncertain, still human, and that is where the tension lies, because the world around him does not allow for uncertainty, it does not accept hesitation, it does not understand fear. To them, he must be steady, certain, divine, even if he is none of those things. Morning does not arrive gently. Inside the palace of a pharaoh, it is not marked by the soft comfort of waking naturally, nor by the quiet choice to remain a little longer in rest. Instead, it begins with movement, carefully timed, carefully planned, before the sun fully rises above the horizon. The palace is already awake. Faint footsteps echo through long corridors of stone. The distant flicker of torches fades as daylight slowly replaces them. Servants move like shadows, silent, efficient, unseen, and less needed. Nothing is rushed, and yet nothing is delayed. The pharaoh is awakened not by his own will, but by the rhythm of expectation. Hands gently draw back linen curtains. Soft voices speak words of greeting, not casual, not warm, but respectful. Measured, everything feels rehearsed. He rises, not because he chooses to, but because the day has already begun without him. The first moments of his morning are not private, they never are. Servants surround him, not intrusively, but constantly. One brings water, another prepares garments, another waits for instruction that will never truly come. Because everything has already been decided, even the act of dressing is not his own. Layers of fine linen are placed upon him with care. Jewelry is selected not for comfort, but for meaning. Symbols of power, of divinity, of continuity, each piece tells a story. Each detail reinforces who he must be. There is no mirror in the way we understand it today, but he does not need one, because he already knows he is no longer just a person, he is an image, as he is prepared. The palace grows brighter, sunlight filters through high openings, illuminating walls covered in carvings. Scenes of past victories, of offerings to the gods, of pharaohs who once stood where he stands now, they are always present, watching, silent, but never absent. Breakfast is brought, simple, yet abundant, bread, fruit, water drawn from the Nile, but even this moment is not one of ease. He does not eat alone, he is observed, not in a harsh or obvious way, but in a constant, quiet manner, every action noted, every pause understood, because even something as small as how a pharaoh eats carries meaning. Soon the duties begin. He is led through the palace into chambers where decisions are made. The air here feels different, heavier, filled with voices that speak carefully, but with purpose. Advisors present matters of the kingdom, disputes between officials, concerns from distant regions, requests that require approval, each one waiting for his response. He listens, sometimes he speaks, sometimes he simply nods, but even when he remains silent, a decision is made, because silence from a pharaoh is never empty. Time moves slowly here, measured not in hours, but in responsibilities. After the matters of governance come moments that feel almost ceremonial, but they are not optional. He walks through halls where others wait to see him, officials, visitors, messengers. Each one bows deeply, each one speaks with reverence. They do not see a person, they see something beyond that, something they must not question, and so the pharaoh responds in kind, calm, composed, unchanging. But inside, there is movement, a quiet awareness of repetition, of routine, of a life that follows the same path. Again and again, midday arrives. Though it feels no different from morning, the light shifts slightly. The shadows shorten, but the rhythm remains the same. He is guided again, from one chamber to another, from one responsibility to the next. There is no wandering, no moment where he simply chooses to walk without purpose. Even rest is structured when he is allowed to pause. It is brief, controlled, a moment to sit, to breathe, but never to disconnect, because even in stillness, he is the pharaoh. The afternoon brings more interactions, more voices, more decisions. Some are small, barely noticeable, others carry weight, though they are spoken softly, and through it all, the same feeling lingers, a sense that the day is not truly his, that every moment has already been shaped before he even lived it. As the sun begins to lower, the palace shifts once more, the light becomes softer, warmer, but the atmosphere does not relax, it simply changes. Evening arrives not with freedom, but with continuation. The final duties of the day are completed, last conversations, final acknowledgements, the slow winding down of a cycle that will begin again. In exactly the same way, he is led back through the corridors, the same ones, the same steps, the same silence. When he reaches his chamber, there is a brief moment where everything pauses, the servants withdraw, the doors close, and for a short while, he is alone, truly alone. The silence feels different now, not filled with expectation, but with something deeper. Stillness. He sits, or perhaps stands, without purpose. No one is watching, no one is waiting, and yet, he does not feel free, because the structure of the day has already settled into him. The rhythm continues even in silence. He knows that when he sleeps, the same cycle will return, the same morning, the same movements, the same expectations, a life of perfect order, perfect control, perfect repetition. And as night fully settles over the palace, one quiet realization lingers in the stillness, that power, in its highest form, does not always bring freedom. Sometimes, it creates a life where every moment is decided, long before it is ever lived. There is never a moment when the Pharaoh is truly alone, not in the way most people understand solitude, even in silence, even in stillness. Even in the quietest corners of the palace, there is always someone nearby, watching, waiting, listening. Without seeming to, at first, it might seem like a life of comfort, to have every need anticipated, every desire fulfilled before it is even spoken, water brought before thirst is felt, shade offered before the sun becomes too warm, paths cleared before a single step is taken. But over time, something begins to change, because when everything is done for you, you slowly forget what it means to do anything yourself. The Pharaoh does not open doors. He does not prepare his own meals, he does not dress. Without assistance, even the smallest actions are no longer his. Servants move around him constantly, not chaotic, not intrusive, but ever present, like a quiet current that never stops flowing. They speak in low tones, if they speak at all. Their eyes rarely meet his, their movements are precise, practiced, almost invisible. Each one has a role, a purpose, a place within the palace structure that must not be broken. There are those who care for his garments, ensuring every fold is perfect, those who prepare his food, tasting it first, ensuring safety, those who maintain the rooms, adjusting every detail before he arrives. And then, there are those who simply remain close, not for a specific task, but for readiness. To respond, to act, to serve. At a moment's notice, at any given time. Dozens of lives revolve quietly around him, all focused, all attentive, all distant, because despite their closeness, there is a barrier, an invisible line that cannot be crossed. They do not speak freely, they do not laugh in his presence, they do not share thoughts or stories, or anything that might feel human. They serve, and only serve, in the early days. Especially for a young pharaoh. This can feel confusing. Faces that were once familiar become distant, voices that once carried warmth now sound measured, careful, guarded. Even those who may have known him before no longer behave the same. Because now, he is not just someone they know, he is someone they must never forget, and so the distance grows, not physically, but emotionally. The Pharaoh may sit among many, but connection becomes rare. There is no casual conversation, no shared laughter, no moment where someone speaks without thinking of their place. Every word is weighed, every tone adjusted, even kindness feels formal as the days pass. This constant presence begins to feel different. At first, it is comfort, then it becomes normal, and eventually, it becomes something else entirely, a quiet form of isolation, because how can one feel alone when surrounded by so many, and yet that is exactly what begins to happen. The Pharaoh walks through halls filled with movement, but feels untouched by it. He hears voices, but none truly reach him. He is served endlessly, but rarely understood. There are moments, brief and subtle, where he might try to break the pattern, a question asked without formality, a glance held a little longer, a word spoken, not as a ruler, but as a person. But the response is always the same, respectful, controlled, distant. The structure does not bend, because it cannot, to the servants. This distance is necessary, it is protection, order, but to the Pharaoh, it becomes something heavier, a reminder that no matter how close others stand, he exists apart from them. Even trust becomes complicated, because when every action around you is performed out of duty, it becomes difficult to know what is genuine. Is the care real, or simply expected? Is the loyalty personal, or part of the role? These questions are never asked aloud, but they linger, quietly, constantly, at night. When the palace dims and the activity slows, the servants do not disappear, they remain, just beyond sight, just beyond sound, always present, always ready. Even rest is observed from a distance. The Pharaoh may close his eyes, but the world around him never fully does, and in those quiet moments, when the noise fades and the stillness deepens, a strange feeling begins to settle in, not fear, not discomfort, but something more subtle, a sense of being watched. Without being seen, of being surrounded. Without being known, the walls of the palace hold many things. Power, history, tradition, but they also hold something else, a silence. Filled with presence, and as the pharaoh lies within that silence, one thought drifts gently through his mind, that perhaps, being constantly served, is not the same as being cared for, and being constantly surrounded, is not the same as never being alone. There is a difference. Between being powerful, and being believed to be something more, power can be held, it can be used. Shaped. Even questioned, but divinity is something else entirely, for a pharaoh. The belief that he is a god is not a symbol, it is not a metaphor, or it is a truth. Deeply woven into the minds of the people. The priests. And eventually, into his own, from the moment the crown rests upon his head, he is no longer seen as human, he becomes a living bridge between the world of men and the realm of the gods. The sun rises. Because of divine order, the Nile flows. Because balance is maintained, the world continues. Because the pharaoh exists, this is what they believe. And belief is powerful, at first. It may feel distant, almost unreal. The pharaoh hears the words, sees the rituals, observes the way people bow before him, but somewhere deep within, there is still a quiet awareness, I am still the same. But that awareness does not remain untouched for long, because everything around him begins to reinforce a different truth. Priests speak not to him, but through him. When they address him, their words carry a tone that is not meant for a ruler, but for something sacred. They do not question, they interpret. Every action he takes is given meaning, every decision seen as divine will, if he speaks. It is truth, if he remains silent. It is intention, if he acts. It is destiny unfolding, and slowly, quietly, this begins to change something inside him, because when the entire world reflects the same idea back to you, it becomes difficult to see anything else. The line between who he is and who he is believed to be begins to blur, but with that belief comes something far heavier than power, expectation. A pharaoh cannot hesitate. Because a god does not doubt, he cannot show fear. Because a god does not feel uncertain, he cannot admit confusion. Because a god already understands, every human instinct must be hidden, suppressed, silenced. Even in moments where uncertainty rises, he must remain still, composed, unshaken, because even the smallest crack in the image of divinity could ripple outward. If the pharaoh is not perfect, then what does that mean for the world? This thought is never spoken aloud, but it exists quietly beneath everything, and so the pressure grows, not loudly, not suddenly, but steadily, like a weight that is always present, always pressing. The pharaoh begins to carry himself differently. Not just because he must, but because he feels he has no other choice. His movements become slower, more deliberate, his words fewer, more precise. Even his thoughts begin to change. He questions himself less openly, not because the questions disappear, but because they have nowhere to go. There is no one he can speak to freely, no one who would answer him as an equal, because how do you speak honestly to a god? Even those closest to him maintain the distance. They advise, they suggest, they guide, but they do not challenge, and without challenge, without reflection, something begins to fade, the ability to see oneself clearly. As days turn into years, the role becomes heavier, not because it changes, but because it never does. There is no moment where he can step outside of it, no space where he can simply exist without meaning. Even in solitude, the identity remains, because it has been placed upon him. Not just by others, but by the world itself. The temples remind him, the rituals reinforce it, the people believe it, and belief once fully formed, is difficult to escape, there are moments, rare and fleeting, where something breaks through, a thought, a feeling, a quiet realization, what if I am not what they believe? But those moments do not last, they cannot, because the structure of his life does not allow them to grow, and so they fade, replaced once again by expectation, by stillness, by the constant, unchanging weight of being something he may not fully understand. As the sun sets over the Nile, casting long shadows across temples built to honor eternity, the pharaoh remains where he always is, at the center, unmoving, unquestioned, divine, in the eyes of all who look upon him, but somewhere beneath the layers of gold, of silence, of belief, there is still something else, something quieter, something fragile, something human, and it carries a question that will never fully disappear. If he is truly a god, why does the weight feel so heavy? The palace wakes slowly, yet again, as though the world itself respects the rhythm of the pharaoh's life. But today, the day begins differently. Not with the weight of administration, not with advisors and petitions, but with sacred expectation. For a pharaoh, religion is not a belief. It is life. Every sunrise, every movement, every breath is measured against the unseen standards of gods who watch endlessly. He rises before the first light touches the horizon. The corridors are hushed, almost reverent, as attendants guide him toward the chamber where the rituals will begin. The air is heavy with incense, the soft glow of oil lamps flickering against walls carved with sacred images of gods and ancestors. He does not enter as a man. He enters as a living conduit, a bridge between mortal life and divine order. The first ritual of the day is simple, yet unyielding. Water must be offered to the gods. Incense must burn in precise patterns. Words, carefully pronounced, must reach ears that may or may not exist in the world he can touch. Every gesture matters. A slight misplacement, a hesitation, and the world might tilt. The priests whisper. Chaos is always a possibility in the absence of perfection. He performs the acts not for himself, not for comfort, not for tradition, but because it is expected, because centuries of belief demand it, because the people watch, and the gods, real or imagined, are said to watch as well. Priests move around him silently. Some whisper instructions. Others simply observe. Every moment is guided, calculated, precise. There is no room for error, no space for doubt. Even the act of breathing becomes measured, purposeful. He is a living symbol, not a child, not a man, not even a king, in the way we understand it today. He is a god walking among mortals, and the smallest misstep, the faintest ripple in rhythm, could echo across the world. The rituals continue through the morning. Offerings are made. Sacred texts are recited. Hymns fill the high ceilings, their echoes bouncing like whispers of eternity. And with every repeated action, the pharaoh feels the quiet tug of exhaustion. Not physical exhaustion, but something deeper. A psychological weight that presses against the mind with invisible hands. To an outsider, this life may seem magical. A king honored as divine, surrounded by devotion and mystery, but to the pharaoh, each ritual is a reminder that he is never free. That even in the smallest moment, his body, his actions, his very essence belong not to him, but to the gods, the people, and the expectations of eternity. The midday sun climbs higher, but the rituals do not pause. Private offerings must be made, even as he moves toward public ceremonies. His garments are adjusted again, golden symbols carefully positioned against his skin. The priests nod at him. The advisors bow silently. Servants stand ready, always. Every part of him is observed. Every motion interpreted, even eating, even sitting, even blinking, carries meaning. And yet, There is a strange calm in this repetition. A rhythm that almost lulls the mind into quiet acquiescence. A structure that the pharaoh can rely on. A sequence so old it almost feels natural, but behind the calm, tension lingers. Always, the gods, real or imagined, are never forgiving. And the people's expectations do not falter. The smallest error might be remembered for centuries. The slightest hesitation could be interpreted as weakness. By the afternoon, as the sun casts long shadows over the palace walls, the rituals continue to ripple outward. A procession through the courtyard. Offerings to the Nile. Prayers to the ancestors. He moves through the ceremonies like a shadow of himself. Present yet distant, focused yet detached, and when the day reaches its quietest moment. When the incense finally burns down and the last hymn fades into stillness. The pharaoh is left alone, momentarily, with his thoughts, a brief pause in the rhythm. A fleeting stillness where he can feel the weight of the day. The endless repetitions. And the unspoken burden of being a god among mortals. In this calm, he senses the paradox of his existence. To be divine is to be perfect. To be perfect is to be tireless. To be tireless is to be endless, and yet he is human. His limbs ache in ways invisible to others. His mind tires in ways words cannot express. His heart longs for freedom it may never know. The sun dips below the horizon. The temple lamps are extinguished. The palace settles into quiet. The rituals have ended. But they never truly leave. They linger in the walls, in the air, in the steps he will take tomorrow, the next day, the next year, even in sleep. The expectation remains. Even in dreams, the weight presses. To be a pharaoh is to exist in constant ritual. To live not only in life but in eternity, and tonight. As he lays down beneath the gilded ceiling of his chamber, he knows. Tomorrow, the ceremonies will begin again, and he will rise once more. Not as a man. Not as a child. But as a god in the eyes of the world. The night has fallen over the palace, but for the pharaoh, there is no true rest. Outside, the desert stretches silently under the moon, silver dust drifting across the sand like the faint echo of time. Inside, the walls are still, yet they seem to hum with expectation. Whispers of gods long gone. Of ancestors carved into stone. Reach into the quiet corners of his mind. To live as a pharaoh is to live under the gaze of eternity. Not just the gaze of men, not just the admiration of the people, but the invisible, ever-present eyes of the gods themselves. Every word spoken, every action taken, every choice, even the smallest, carries weight, because the gods are not forgiving. He has been taught this from the moment he could understand. A missed offering could bring famine, a mispronounced prayer could invite chaos, a misaligned ritual could anger the divine. And for centuries, these lessons have been whispered into the ears of every pharaoh who came before him. Now, they whisper into his. The fear is subtle at first, a tension beneath the skin. A pause before speaking. A hesitation that flutters like a bird trapped in the chest. He moves through the palace with care, even in solitude, because he knows. The gods are everywhere, not as statues. Not as stories. But as presence. Morning comes again, soft and deliberate, and with it the reminder that the gods are not patient. Priests stand ready, their hands steady, their eyes sharp. They observe the slightest tremor in his hands, the briefest falter in his voice. Their judgment is silent, yet unrelenting. It is not cruelty. It is duty. He approaches the ritual chamber. The air is thick with incense, smoke curling toward the high ceilings in intricate patterns, like ephemeral hieroglyphs. He kneels carefully, adjusts the offerings, pronounces each prayer with measured precision, and yet, even as he speaks, a shadow of doubt lingers. What if a word was wrong? What if a gesture was incomplete? What if the gods themselves were displeased? That fear shapes him, not into cruelty, not into paranoia, but into vigilance. Every decision, every movement, every thought is considered through the lens of divine judgment. He moves as though watched, and perhaps he is. Perhaps unseen eyes track him constantly, not only through temples and priests, but through the belief of all who serve him. And this fear is never fully silent, it seeps into the quietest moments, into the private corners of his mind, into sleep, which becomes shallow. A fragile, fleeting reprieve, even in the palace gardens, walking along paths lined with lotus blooms, the fear persists. He marvels at the beauty of life, yet cannot fully enjoy it. The sun on his skin feels warm. Yet he wonders if the gods disapprove of indulgence. The water of the Nile reflects sunlight. Yet he worries whether the reflections are blessings or omens. At night, the fear deepens, shadows move differently. The slightest creak of a floorboard feels ominous. Every rustle of silk is a reminder that the unseen world is patient. Observing, waiting, sometimes he dreams of gods, terrible, radiant, silent figures whose eyes seem to pierce through flesh and bone. They do not speak, they do not move, yet their presence is undeniable, and when he wakes, the memory lingers. A quiet echo in his chest, shaping the rhythm of the day to come. This fear, though quiet, is constant. It is never loud. It does not shout, it hums beneath the surface. Like the pulse of the Nile under a still moon, the pharaoh carries it with him always, into ceremonies, into councils, into moments of solitude. It is invisible, yet tangible, a weight heavier than gold, heavier than the heaviest jewels placed upon his person, and the irony is, the people worship him precisely because of the god's supposed approval. Their belief in his divinity depends on his perfection, and his perfection depends on the god's favor. It is a fragile chain, a balance that can shatter with a single misstep, and he walks it every day, even the slightest lapse. A word mispronounced in prayer, a gesture forgotten, could undo him, not just in life, but in memory. And, for a pharaoh, legacy is everything, so he moves carefully through the palace. He kneels before statues. He touches sacred walls. He whispers the prayers. He offers the incense. He does not eat hastily. He does not speak carelessly, and yet, even with every precaution, the fear never truly fades. It is a silent companion, patient, unrelenting, shaping every breath, every thought, every heartbeat. It is the price of divinity, it is the weight of eternity. As the night deepens, and the palace finally falls into the quiet rhythm of torches flickering and distant footsteps fading, the pharaoh sits alone. He is surrounded by silence. Yet nothing feels safe, because the gods are not gone. They are waiting, they are watching, and they are never forgiving. The fear is eternal, and it will follow him, always, until the last moment of life, and perhaps beyond. The palace shimmers with gold. Sunlight bounces off polished walls, reflecting intricate patterns onto floors of stone and marble. Columns rise like silent guardians, adorned with hieroglyphs that tell the story of kings long gone. Precious jewels glimmer in the soft light. Bowls overflow with fruit, honey, and wine. Servants move silently, anticipating every need, every desire, every whim. It is a world built to inspire awe. And it does. To the outside observer, the life of a pharaoh seems like a dream. Endless wealth, comfort at every turn, luxury without limit. A golden throne, a palace full of treasures, and servants attending to his every movement. It is perfection. It is divine. But the truth is far more complex. The wealth of a pharaoh is not a comfort. It is a prison. Every object, every room, every decoration exists not for him, but for perception, to display power, to reinforce divinity, to ensure that the people see their God and never doubt. Even meals are prepared not for pleasure, but for presentation. Even clothing is chosen not for comfort, but for symbolism. The weight of gold on his skin, the shimmer of jewels, the layers of silk and linen, all serve a purpose beyond himself, and with every comfort comes another form of isolation, because true intimacy, true privacy, is impossible. He walks through corridors filled with beauty. Yet each step reminds him of separation. He is surrounded, yet alone. Every servant is attentive, yet no one is a friend. Every advisor speaks, yet no one truly listens to him as a person. Even laughter, once bright and natural, now feels alien. It exists only in echoes of the past, or carefully orchestrated performances within the palace walls. In his chambers, treasures line the walls. Sculptures, jewelry, finely woven tapestries depicting victories, gods, and dynasties. It is opulence beyond imagination. But each piece serves a function, a reminder of status, a symbol of eternity, a barrier against mortality. The more wealth he possesses, the more the walls seem to close in. He sits on his throne, surrounded by gold and ivory, watching as servants prepare the room for yet another ceremonial meeting. The air is perfumed with incense, the soft glow of oil lamps reflecting on polished floors. And in this beauty, a quiet emptiness grows, because no matter how abundant the riches, they cannot fill the space where companionship should be. In the evenings, he may wander the palace gardens. Lush plants, flowing water, and shaded pathways stretch endlessly. Birds sing. Fish leap in ponds. But he walks alone. The only company is the occasional servant, keeping a careful distance. The natural world provides calm, yet even here, he is apart, he is always separate. Even from beauty itself, friends are impossible. Allies are cautious. Servants, advisors, and priests exist to serve, not to share moments of humanity. Trust is complicated. Loyalty is intertwined with duty. And the few who claim closeness are always measured. Always cautious. Always aware of the fragile line between favor and suspicion. Even meals, once communal, are formalized events. Platters of delicacies are presented with precision, accompanied by the silent observation of those who must never offend, yet are always present. No casual conversation, no jokes, no laughter that is free from expectation. Opulence has a price, it isolates. And so, while the world outside sees a figure bathed in gold, sitting amid treasures and luxury, the pharaoh feels the quiet weight of solitude pressing from every side, the walls that shine with the riches of the kingdom. Also close in, like invisible barriers that cannot be crossed. The servants, attentive and endless in their presence, only heighten the sense of being trapped. The more he has, the less he belongs to himself. Sometimes, late at night, he sits alone in a chamber lined with priceless artifacts. He touches a statue of a god, a carved face frozen in serenity. He gazes at the glittering jewels, the gold, the silk, everything designed to celebrate eternity. And yet he feels nothing but fleeting human longing. A longing for touch, for laughter, for connection. For someone to see him not as divine, but as a man. Wealth, power, divinity, they are gifts to others. For the pharaoh, they are chains. He moves through the palace like a specter, surrounded by abundance, yet hollowed by isolation, and in the quiet, he feels the paradox of his life. The more he has, the less he truly possesses. As the torches flicker and the palace settles into night, he retreats to his private chambers. Rich tapestries line the walls, rare perfumes scent the air, treasures of unimaginable value rest nearby. And yet, he feels the emptiness more acutely than ever. The opulence surrounds him. It dazzles others. It ensures that people see a god, but he sees only himself. Alone, and tomorrow, the golden halls will awaken again, beautiful and suffocating, repeating the cycle of wealth and hidden isolation. The palace is alive with movement, yet the quiet within its walls is thick and measured. Amid gold, silks, and ceremonial halls, the pharaoh's life is deeply intertwined with those closest to him. Yet the closeness is always complicated. In the world of kings, family is never simple. Every bond carries weight, every smile is observed, and every action is interpreted. Royal marriages are not born of love. At least, not initially. They are contracts of power, alliances woven through centuries of dynastic expectation. Daughters of nobles, sisters, distant cousins. The pharaoh's partners are chosen not only for beauty or temperament but for lineage, influence, and the stability they bring to the throne. The decision is rarely his alone, though in appearance, it may seem so. Advisors weigh the merits. Priests offer divinely inspired counsel. And the people, though silent in their opinions, measure the union through the lens of legacy. The ceremonies themselves are a spectacle. The bride adorned in layers of fine linen, jewels glinting in the torchlight, her face serene yet unreadable. The pharaoh approaches, golden crown casting a shadow over eyes that already carry a lifetime of expectation. They exchange words of ritual, promises that echo through generations, gestures that have been repeated in countless forms for centuries. It is beautiful. It is grand. It is overwhelming. Yet beneath the grandeur lies a subtle tension. To the pharaoh, marriage is not simply about companionship. It is about duty, about continuity, about the lineage of gods walking among mortals, and yet, intimacy is elusive. Children are a part of this equation, often born not only of love but of expectation. He is responsible for heirs, for the next link in a chain that stretches far beyond his own lifespan. Each child carries the promise of future stability. Each child is watched from birth, observed for signs of wisdom, strength, and divine favor. The joy of parenthood is tempered by pressure. Every misstep in their upbringing could be seen as weakness. Every moment of carelessness, a potential crack in the foundation of eternity. Even within the private chambers, there is no true escape from observation. Servants are always nearby, advising, ensuring, guarding. Moments that might feel tender in another household are formalized here. Every glance, every word, every gesture is filtered through layers of expectation. The pharaoh may feel love, or affection, or pride. Yet it is never free from the constant reminder that these feelings must coexist with duty. Siblings, too, occupy a delicate space. They are family, yet rivals, allies, or sometimes threats, depending on circumstance. Each is weighed against the measure of power, each observed for ambition, each tested in ways subtle and unspoken. The pharaoh learns early that in royal family life, trust is never absolute. Loyalty is measured, carefully cultivated, and carefully monitored. Even the quietest moments in the gardens, once imagined as peaceful retreats, are still touched by the demands of royal life. Discussions may begin casually, but every word spoken carries weight, every glance is analyzed, every laugh moderated. The palace, despite its beauty, becomes both sanctuary and stage. A place where human emotions are expressed in the language of duty, ritual, and expectation rather than free, unguarded intimacy. And yet, life persists in small ways: a child's laughter, a brief exchange of understanding with a partner, the tender gestures between siblings. These fleeting moments are precious. They are glimpses of humanity in a world defined by divinity and duty, but they are fragile. Every moment of connection is balanced against centuries of expectation. Every instance of warmth is shadowed by the knowledge that nothing is entirely personal. Even love is observed. Even care is calculated. The pharaoh walks through these relationships carefully. He learns to navigate the delicate boundaries, to balance power with affection, duty with tenderness, divinity with humanity, and though it is exhausting, he persists. Because in the world of kings, family is more than companionship. It is survival. It is legacy. It is the thread that ties eternity to the mortal world. As night falls and the palace quiets, he retreats to his chambers. His partner rests nearby, perhaps a child in the cradle, perhaps a sibling quietly tending to affairs. The golden silks that surround him are as much barriers as they are comfort, and in that moment, he realizes the intimacy of family is as much a puzzle as the throne itself. A life where love, duty, power, and divinity are intertwined cannot be simple, yet somehow He continues, "Tomorrow, the ceremonies will begin again. Children will grow under the watchful eyes of gods and men. Partners will walk the corridors of expectation. And the Pharaoh will remain, navigating the delicate dance of family, legacy, and eternity. Even within walls of gold, the palace harbors shadows. The Pharaoh's world is one of opulence and divinity, yet it is also a world teeming with quiet danger. Every corridor, every chamber, every whispered conversation carries potential threat. The same hands that serve can conspire. The same eyes that admire can plot. And the very people sworn to loyalty can harbor secrets. Power, in its highest form, is intoxicating, but it is also fragile. The Pharaoh learns this early. Perhaps through a misheard word. Perhaps through the nervous glance of an advisor who lingers too long in his presence. Perhaps in the subtle arrangement of scrolls on a table, a message hidden in plain sight. Threat does not always announce itself with clashing swords. Often, it creeps softly, like shadow pooling in a corner. The palace is full of observers. Ministers, generals, priests, all carefully performing their roles. But beneath the ritual and reverence, ambition thrives. Some seek favor, quietly nudging decisions in their preferred direction. Others whisper rumors, testing loyalty, sowing seeds of doubt. And a few, a very few, plot in silence, patient and calculating, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The Pharaoh becomes a reader of subtlety. He notices hesitations in speech, tiny shifts in posture, eyes that linger too long or dart away too quickly. He learns to decipher meaning from silence. The cracks in loyalty, the glimmers of deceit, they are everywhere, waiting for him to miss them. Even family is not exempt. Siblings, cousins, distant relatives, relationships bound by blood can also carry ambition. The throne is not merely a seat of comfort, it is the axis upon which the kingdom turns. And anyone who touches it, touches eternity itself. The lessons of betrayal are taught not through violence alone, but through careful, silent observation. He notices the advisor who hesitates before answering. He observes the general who asks questions too pointedly. He senses the servant whose loyalty feels rehearsed. Each instance becomes a thread in a web that is invisible yet binding. Sometimes the threats are open. Rebellion in distant provinces, a governor refusing orders, a foreign emissary testing the boundaries of diplomacy. But the palace is the heart of power, and the quietest dangers are always the most terrifying. Fear settles in slowly, like a fog in the corridors. It is not constant panic, but a subtle, persistent awareness that even those closest to him could betray him. That a whispered word could turn allies into enemies. That the foundation of the throne itself is never completely secure, and so, the Pharaoh moves carefully. Every decree is measured. Every audience is controlled. Every interaction is a balance between trust and caution. Even those who have served faithfully for decades are watched, not with suspicion born of cruelty, but with vigilance born of necessity. At night, he may wander the palace halls alone, lantern in hand, listening to distant echoes of footsteps that are not his own. Each sound could be routine, or it could be the whisper of a plot forming. Every shadow might conceal an ally or an assassin. The mind sharpens under this tension. He learns to anticipate betrayal before it emerges. He cultivates patience, awareness, and subtlety, and yet, despite the constant vigilance, doubt remains. Even the most trusted allies carry uncertainty. Even decisions that seem simple may hide consequences not yet imagined. The weight of betrayal is psychological as much as political. It seeps into every thought, every plan, every action. It teaches the Pharaoh that power is never absolute, because trust is never absolute. He begins to understand that divinity does not shield from deceit. Gold does not guard against ambition. Titles do not prevent envy. Even gods may watch. But they do not intervene. The palace, resplendent as it is, becomes a labyrinth of quiet threats. Every hall, every chamber, Every corridor echoes with the knowledge that loyalty can be fragile, and that betrayal often wears the face of friendship, and in this environment, the pharaoh develops a dual existence, a public figure of perfection, divinity, and calm, and a private figure of caution, suspicion, and calculation. By candlelight, he reviews messages, meets with confidants, and weighs possibilities. Every move must anticipate the unseen. Every word must anticipate interpretation. Every decision must anticipate consequence, because in the palace of gold and glory, survival is a careful art. And the greatest danger is not war, not famine, not even rebellion, it is the quiet betrayal that emerges when vigilance falters, and as he retires to his chambers, alone beneath the high ceilings adorned with gods and ancestors, he knows one truth: the throne is never entirely safe, and the shadows in the palace are never empty. The next day will bring ceremonies, councils, and advisors. And somewhere between the incense and the gold, threats will whisper, waiting for the right moment to strike. The pharaoh's power is absolute, or so it appears, yet even the most revered god-king cannot exist in isolation. The throne, though gleaming with gold, is supported by hands that guide, counsel, and sometimes manipulate. Advisors and priests are the silent currents beneath the grandeur of power. They are ever present, shaping the flow of the kingdom without a visible hand. Advisors arrive each morning like the first light of dawn, subtle, necessary, yet sometimes burdensome. They carry scrolls, reports from distant provinces, petitions from citizens, and rumors from courts afar. Their words are measured, deliberate, chosen to influence the pharaoh without appearing to. A misstep here can shift the balance of power. A misread expression can spark doubt, suspicion, or worse. Priests, too, hold an invisible weight. They are the interpreters of the divine. Through them, the pharaoh's actions are legitimized. Through them, his words carry authority. Their chants and rituals reinforce the perception of godhood, sustaining the fragile bridge between mortal and divine, yet priests wield subtle power. They decide which omens are favorable, which rituals are essential, and which interpretations of the gods will are correct. A pharaoh cannot simply act on impulse, his choices are filtered through the eyes of the divine, as interpreted by these human intermediaries. The interplay between advisors and priests is delicate. Some seek only to serve, others to influence, and a few to control. The pharaoh, though supreme, must navigate their counsel carefully. He listens, questions, sometimes agrees, sometimes subtly rebukes. Each interaction is a dance, choreographed with a mix of strategy, respect, and intuition. Even decisions that seem small are rarely simple. Which city will receive funding? Which general will lead a campaign? Which festival will be expanded this year? Each answer carries consequences far beyond the moment, rippling through provinces and people. Advisors and priests provide the maps of these unseen currents. But maps, no matter how detailed, cannot prevent unexpected storms. The pharaoh learns to read between words, to sense hesitation, to detect ambition disguised as loyalty. He notices how a priest lingers on certain phrases, or how an advisor emphasizes a specific fact. Over time, these small cues become a language of their own, a quiet understanding of influence and subtlety. And yet, there is an unspoken bond. The advisors and priests, though powerful, are also dependent. Their authority exists only as long as the pharaoh remains unquestioned. Remove the crown, and their influence diminishes. They walk a careful line between service and ambition, fully aware that their power is derivative, contingent, and fragile. This dynamic shapes the pharaoh's daily existence. Every council, every ritual, every meeting is a careful negotiation. Not one of open conflict, but of subtle assertion. He must assert his divinity, maintain respect, and yet absorb guidance that will keep the kingdom functioning. Even the most private decisions are influenced by this invisible council. The pharaoh may wish to act freely, yet he is never entirely unobserved. Every choice, every gesture, is weighed for its divine implication, its political impact, and its reflection upon him as both man and God. The psychological weight of this awareness is profound. He is supreme, yet never alone. He is God, yet constantly measured. The advisors and priests act as mirrors, reflecting power back to him, but also showing him its limits. It is a delicate balance, one maintained by centuries of tradition and careful management. One misstep, one misjudged comment, and the harmony can collapse, leaving the pharaoh exposed, vulnerable to influence, to rumor, to betrayal, and so, the day passes in a rhythm of council and ceremony. Meetings that appear routine are, in truth, exercises of precision. Every audience, every decision, every prayer carries layers of meaning, each interpreted by the eyes of those who understand both mortal ambition and divine expectation. Even when the day concludes and the advisors withdraw, the priests retire, and the palace grows quiet, the pharaoh is left with the echo of their presence. Decisions made with their guidance reverberate through the corridors of the palace, through provinces, through generations. Power, he realizes, is never solely his own. It is a shared weight, a network of influence, trust, and subtle tension, and in this quiet reflection, the pharaoh understands a truth that is both empowering and unnerving. He is God, yet even a god walks upon a stage set by others' hands. The throne is his, but the currents beneath it are ever moving, unseen, and quietly shaping the future. The sun sets over the Nile, and in the deepening shadows, the pharaoh prepares for another day. Another cycle of counsel, ritual, and observation. Another day in which the invisible threads of advisors and priests will guide, test, and shape him. Quietly, endlessly, inevitably, the world outside the palace walls moves in ordinary rhythms, farmers tending the Nile's banks, merchants arranging their goods, children running through dusty streets. Yet within the public eye, the pharaoh is no ordinary being. Every appearance is a carefully choreographed spectacle. Every gesture, every glance, every step is measured for effect. The people must see not a man, but a god. A living embodiment of order, power, and divine will. Ceremonies are frequent and meticulously planned. Crowds gather in open courtyards, their eyes wide with anticipation. Trumpets sound, banners flutter, and priests chant invocations that echo across stone walls. The pharaoh emerges, adorned in gold and linen. A figure both distant and magnetic, the sight is mesmerizing. The effect is intentional, but behind the grandeur lies relentless pressure. The pharaoh must maintain an image of perfection at all times. A smile must be tempered, a nod deliberate. Any expression of fatigue, doubt, or irritation could ripple through the crowd, eroding the carefully constructed perception of divinity. Even simple movements, raising a hand, stepping onto a dais, accepting an offering, are laden with meaning. Every action communicates stability, authority, and spiritual alignment. The people do not just watch. They interpret. They believe. The advisors observe silently, whispering subtle reminders or correcting small missteps. Priests reinforce every gesture through ritual. Servants adjust attire, ensuring nothing disrupts the seamless image. Everything is orchestrated, yet the pharaoh alone bears the burden of embodiment. He is, in essence, acting constantly, performing divinity in a world that expects perfection. Public appearances extend beyond ceremonial spaces. Processions along the Nile, inspections of construction projects, festivals in honor of gods and ancestors, every occasion requires him to perform his role flawlessly. The world's gaze is always present. Even in crowds, he remains isolated, untouchable, and symbolic. A glance from the wrong angle, a hesitation in speech, or an unnoticed tremor could inspire doubt. In a civilization that equates divine favor with prosperity, even a minor imperfection is dangerous, and yet, within this performance, there is subtle artistry. The pharaoh learns the power of presence. He studies the timing of gestures, the sway of robes, the projection of voice. His aura is cultivated deliberately. It is a language unspoken yet universally understood by those who behold him. Even his closest advisors cannot replicate it. Even those sworn to serve cannot fully inhabit the persona of God-King. The tension is constant. Public adoration is intoxicating, but it is also relentless. The Pharaoh cannot rest, cannot falter, cannot retreat. He must remain visible, impressive, unwavering, even in moments that appear casual: a wave to the crowd, a brief inspection of the Nile, a smile to a visiting dignitary. The same principles apply. His humanity is hidden behind layers of gold, ritual, and expectation, and in private, he feels the quiet weight of performance. While others see awe and devotion, he feels isolation and restraint. The world perceives perfection, yet behind the image, he is always aware of human limitations, doubts, and fears. Public image becomes a double-edged sword. It secures loyalty and respect, yet it reinforces the separation from the very people he governs. He is revered, but unseen. He is admired, but unapproachable. Even portraits and sculptures, created to immortalize him, reinforce the divide. Artists capture the idealized version of the Pharaoh, serene, strong, eternal. But reality, the quiet moments of uncertainty, the fatigue, the fleeting fear, is never depicted. Those truths remain behind the palace walls, invisible to the world. The life of public perception is an endless cycle. The more he demonstrates divinity, the more the people believe. The more the people believe, the higher the stakes. Each appearance must surpass the last, and each audience must leave convinced of his perfection. It is a performance without end, a dance of shadows and light, obedience and expectation, divinity and human fragility. As the day concludes and crowds disperse, the Pharaoh returns to the quiet of the palace. The cheers, the chants, the admiration linger in the stone halls like echoes. Yet he knows this: tomorrow, he must perform again. Tomorrow, he must embody perfection once more, and the cycle continues, constant, relentless, eternal. The throne is heavy, not with gold, nor with jewels, but with the weight of responsibility. For the Pharaoh, leadership is more than power. It is an endless, unyielding duty. Each decision he makes ripples across the kingdom, affecting lives he will never see, consequences he can never fully predict. The Nile may flood, crops may fail, borders may tremble, but the blame, praise, and expectation always converge upon him. From sunrise to sunset, the demands are relentless. Advisors press reports into his hands. Priests insist on the precision of rituals. Generals await orders, each command carrying the lives of thousands. Citizens may be silent, but their faith, their fear, and their hope weigh upon him. Leadership is not a solitary act. It is a constant negotiation between divine expectation, human limitation, and political reality. The Pharaoh rises early, long before the first light touches the temple columns. His schedule is orchestrated with military precision, audiences with advisors, ceremonial duties, private reflection, and the quiet inspection of matters both mundane and monumental. Even rest is measured. Sleep is a calculated indulgence, brief and carefully timed. Every choice carries weight. A decree favoring one province over another may seem minor, yet it can spark resentment, unrest, or political maneuvering. The Pharaoh must weigh these decisions with foresight that stretches far beyond the immediate moment. He becomes a living map of the kingdom, each decision a line in the story of its future. The burden is not just administrative, it is deeply personal. The lives of countless subjects depend on his wisdom, judgment, and sometimes restraint. Every famine avoided, every rebellion quelled, every resource distributed fairly or unfairly becomes part of the invisible ledger he carries. And in the quiet hours of the night, he feels it pressing against him like the Nile itself, constant, unyielding, and vast. Leadership is also a psychological weight. There is no opportunity for indecision or error. A pharaoh cannot falter in thought, hesitate in action, or show weakness to the world. Even private moments are colored by the awareness that every misstep might echo into eternity. He is surrounded by those sworn to advise, yet even advice is layered with ambition and caution. Every suggestion must be weighed, every counsel scrutinized. The advisors and priests act as both shields and potential traps. They illuminate the path, but they also remind him that perception can be as dangerous as action. Isolation deepens the burden. While others seek companionship, the Pharaoh finds that closeness is impossible. He must remain untouchable, above human faults, beyond emotional entanglements. To show favoritism, anger, or uncertainty, even subtly, can destabilize the delicate balance of governance and divinity, and yet, despite the weight, leadership also carries a profound, silent beauty. The Pharaoh witnesses the world unfold under his guidance, the river flowing predictably through fertile fields, temples rising from the earth like monuments to eternity, people adhering to customs that tie past to present. His choices, deliberate and considered, shape civilization itself. But every triumph is shadowed by the ever-present knowledge of mortality. The world he stewards will continue without him, and the permanence he craves is elusive. His actions are monumental, yet ultimately transient. Even gods may fade in memory, even pharaohs become stories. At times, the solitude of decision-making is overwhelming. He sits in the quiet of his chamber, maps and scrolls spread before him, tracing lines of power, imagining the consequences of paths not yet taken. The palace is filled with golden light, but within the room, only the weight of responsibility remains tangible. Leadership is not glory. It is endurance. It is constant calculation. It is living with the knowledge that every choice matters, that every moment is observed, and that the balance of life itself rests, in part, on his shoulders. As the sun sets and torches flicker across the palace walls, the Pharaoh prepares for yet another night of decisions, reflection, and the quiet, unending awareness of his role. The burden is unceasing. The responsibility is eternal. And the man beneath the crown carries it alone. The Pharaoh's throne is not only a seat of divinity, it is the command center of a kingdom that stretches across deserts, rivers, and fertile valleys. And with such reach comes responsibility far beyond the palace walls, the responsibility of war. Even in times of peace, the threat of conflict is never far. Rival kingdoms stir in distant lands. Rebels quietly gather support along the edges of the empire. Alliances are fragile, treaties easily broken. The Nile may nourish the people, but it also carries rumors and intelligence of unrest. And the Pharaoh, seen as god, king, and ultimate authority, must navigate it all. Commanding an army is both ceremonial and terrifying. He does not simply issue orders. He embodies strategy, morale, and discipline. Soldiers look to him not just as a leader, but as a divine protector. Their courage is inspired by his presence, yet their fate rests in his judgment. One decision could determine life or death for thousands, and the weight of that responsibility presses heavier than any crown. Preparations begin long before battle. Maps are studied in candlelit chambers. Generals present reports in hushed tones, detailing supplies, troop movements, and potential weaknesses in enemy defenses. Advisors argue quietly, offering counsel, often in coded language meant to test the pharaoh's decisiveness. Priests are consulted, interpreting omens and signs from the gods, guiding strategy with divine insight, or sometimes, divine intimidation. The pharaoh learns to measure not just the battlefield, but the human heart. Victory requires more than strength, it demands foresight, patience, and the ability to predict betrayal. A general's ambition, a soldier's hesitation, a neighbor kingdom's duplicity, all are pieces in a complex game with real consequences. When battle begins, it is both majestic and horrifying. Chariots thunder across the desert sands. Archers release arrows in synchronized arcs. Soldiers chant prayers, seeking protection and courage. The pharaoh is at the center of it all, an imposing figure whose presence inspires awe, fear, and obedience, yet even amid the spectacle, fear lingers beneath the surface. He knows that the outcome is never guaranteed. He watches the lines of battle, aware that a single misstep, misplaced troops, delayed orders, misread signals, can turn triumph into disaster. The psychological weight is immense. Unlike advisors or generals, the Pharaoh bears ultimate responsibility. If lives are lost, if cities fall, if alliances shatter, it is his judgment that will be questioned by history, by priests, and by the people. Even the gods, in their silent observation, are imagined to hold him accountable. Beyond strategy, there is diplomacy. Not all wars are fought with spears. Some are fought with words, gifts, and carefully orchestrated ceremonies. The Pharaoh negotiates with rival rulers, balancing threats with concessions, projecting power without provocation, and showing mercy without appearing weak. In every move, he maintains the image of divinity while wielding mortal intellect, and the tension never leaves him. Even within the palace, miles from the battlefield, the Pharaoh feels the pulse of conflict. Messages arrive at all hours. Reports of skirmishes, desert raids, and shifting alliances. Every report is a decision waiting to be made. Every choice carries the lives of thousands and the legacy of centuries. Victories are celebrated, yet the celebrations are tempered by awareness of fragility. One victory cannot secure eternity. The enemy remains, new threats arise, and the Nile continues to flow with the same indifference that reminds him of mortality. Even in triumph, the Pharaoh's mind cannot rest. War leaves more than physical scars, it leaves a psychological imprint. Nights are restless, sleep interrupted by visions of battle, by the echo of commands and cries. The weight of lives lost, the weight of decisions made in the heat of strategy, clings to him like a shadow. And in these quiet moments, he realizes the paradox of his role. He is divine, yet entirely human. The burden of military responsibility is never temporary. It ebbs and flows with the tides of politics, alliances, and rebellion. And while advisors, generals, and priests can guide, interpret, and counsel, the final judgment, victory or defeat, rests solely upon him. As the sun sets over the encampments and the Nile glimmers like molten gold, the Pharaoh contemplates the next campaign, the next potential rebellion, the next threat lurking beyond the horizon. The crown on his head is heavy, but the unseen weight of lives, armies, and the fate of a civilization presses even harder. In the world of gods and men, the battlefield is not just outside the palace, it is etched into the heart of the ruler himself. Even within the walls of a palace gilded with gold, the Pharaoh knows he is never truly safe. The corridors glimmer with light from oil lamps. Servants move silently, their steps measured. Priests whisper prayers to unseen gods. Advisors bend over scrolls with calm authority. And yet, beneath the opulence, a shadow lingers, a shadow that has no form, no name, yet is always present, the fear of assassination. Power attracts more than admiration. It draws envy, ambition, and malice. Every throne has its challengers, some obvious, others hidden in plain sight. Ministers who smile too easily, generals who linger near the crown's edge, even family whose loyalty is untested. Any of them could carry the dagger of betrayal. The Pharaoh has learned to read the palace like a battlefield. Doors are monitored. Footsteps are noted. Conversations, even those that appear casual, are carefully filtered for hints of disloyalty. He notices the smallest gestures, a glance held too long, a hand that trembles, a pause in speech. Each is a potential signal, a warning, a clue. Paranoia is constant. He sleeps with guards stationed nearby, and even in rest, one eye seems always open. A servant might bow too deeply, a page may carry a message with subtle misdirection. Even whispers from the priests and advisors are considered with caution. Advice may hide ambition, yet the fear is not merely physical. It is psychological. The possibility of betrayal seeps into every decision, every interaction. Even a routine council meeting becomes a test of loyalty. Every decree, every word, every gesture must be scrutinized for hidden consequences. One misstep could be fatal. One careless trust could end his reign. Or his life. Assassination is rarely obvious. It is subtle, silent, and strategic. Poison may be slipped into a cup. Arrows may fly from a distance. Schemes may unravel slowly, unseen until the final, devastating moment. The Pharaoh knows that his enemies do not need to confront him openly, they only need patience, cunning, and opportunity. This fear reshapes him. He moves carefully, with purpose, never giving the impression of weakness. Even his closest companions are considered through a lens of vigilance. Loyalty is measured not by words, but by actions observed over months, years, decades, yet, despite the constant anxiety, he cannot appear fearful. The people must see a God, untouchable and eternal. A ruler who falters in public, who shows hesitation or doubt, risks more than physical danger. He risks undermining the faith of the people, and with it, the stability of the kingdom. The palace itself becomes a fortress not only against invaders but against the invisible enemies within. Guards are everywhere, at entrances, corridors, even within chambers. Doors are reinforced. Messages are scrutinized. Food and drink are tested. Every layer of protection is a reminder that, despite all the gold and grandeur, the greatest danger may come from those closest to him, and yet, the fear is more than vigilance, it is solitude. Even amidst advisors, priests, and family, the Pharaoh cannot fully relax. He cannot trust completely. He must navigate the constant tension between intimacy and suspicion. Human connection becomes a luxury that may prove lethal. The psychological toll is profound. Each day, he rehearses movements, words, and gestures, anticipating possible threats. Each night, sleep is light, interrupted by dreams of betrayal, knives, and whispered conspiracies. The crown may symbolize divinity, but it also symbolizes the fragility of life in the hands of absolute power. Even with all precautions, the shadow never fully lifts. He walks through golden halls, aware that a dagger could be hidden in plain sight. He hears footsteps and wonders, are they loyal, or do they carry treachery? Even the servants' whispers carry double meaning, filtered by imagination and caution. This fear, silent, invisible, ever-present, is perhaps the heaviest burden of all. For while wars may be fought and victories celebrated, the threat of betrayal within the palace cannot be vanquished by armies, rituals, or divine favor. It is personal, constant, and deeply isolating. As night deepens and the torches flicker against the palace walls, the Pharaoh sits alone in his chamber. The gold around him glimmers, the air smells faintly of incense, and the shadows stretch like silent watchers. He knows that tomorrow, and every day after, the danger will remain. Not as a distant concept, not as an abstract threat, but as a tangible, pressing reality, shaping every thought, every movement, every decision, because in the life of a pharaoh, the greatest enemy is not always the foreign army, nor famine, nor disaster, but the quiet, patient hand of betrayal that can strike at any moment, unseen and unstoppable. The crown on his head is heavy, and the dagger in the shadows is heavier still. Even a pharaoh, draped in gold and clothed in silk, is still flesh and bone. And in the quiet corners of the palace, beyond the awe and spectacle, the fragility of the human body becomes painfully apparent. Illness does not announce itself with grandeur. It creeps quietly, unnoticed at first, a fever that lingers, a cough that refuses to fade, a sudden weakness in a strong arm. For a pharaoh, every symptom is magnified, every ache a shadow across divinity. Even the slightest imperfection is troubling, because his body is supposed to be a vessel of perfection, a reflection of the gods themselves. Physicians, skilled yet limited by the knowledge of the age, hover nearby. They bring herbs, poultices, and prayers. They examine him with careful precision, their eyes scanning for any sign of deterioration. Yet even their wisdom has boundaries. Medicine is part observation, part ritual, and part hope. The remedies are often crude, relying on the potency of plants, the alignment of the stars, or whispered incantations. Fevered nights are the hardest. The pharaoh lies upon a bed swathed in fine linens, attendants fanning him, soothing him, murmuring prayers to gods whose intervention is never guaranteed. Each restless moment brings fear, and not only for his own survival, but for the kingdom that relies upon his strength. A ruler unwell is a kingdom unsteady, the body's frailty is a constant reminder of mortality. And mortality is a concept the Pharaoh is trained to deny. But the creeping weakness in his chest, the pounding of a relentless headache, the dizziness when rising from the throne. These are undeniable truths. Even gods do not grant immunity from human vulnerability. Some illnesses are visible, others invisible. A subtle infection, a poisoned meal, even a strain of fatigue accumulated over decades of duty, each can spiral into catastrophe. And the palace staff, ever vigilant, watch closely, prepared for sudden collapse. Healing is rarely instantaneous. Remedies may be administered over days or weeks. Priests chant alongside physicians, blending ritual with medicine, seeking to align the body with divine favor. Yet sometimes, despite all efforts, the Pharaoh remains weak. And even recovery is fragile. A return to strength is measured, cautious, slow, a reminder that the human body is never fully within the control of any king. Isolation intensifies vulnerability. While advisors and servants offer care, intimacy and comfort are rare. He cannot trust every hand that touches him, nor every word spoken in concern. Even those closest must serve with caution, balancing loyalty with observation. The Pharaoh experiences illness in solitude. Despite being constantly surrounded, the psychological weight is just as heavy as the physical. Every ache becomes a meditation on mortality. Every sleepless night is a confrontation with fragility. He is the God King, yet his body betrays him with fevers, fatigue, and weakness. The awareness of death grows sharper when flesh fails, yet, even in weakness, the Pharaoh must maintain appearances. Visitors arrive expecting vigor, councils demand attention, and rituals cannot pause. Strength must be projected even when the body fails. He walks, speaks, and gestures through pain, concealing the human vulnerability that gnaws quietly within. This tension between divine image and human frailty is deeply isolating. It is a reminder that despite wealth, power, and reverence, he is still subject to the same natural laws as any mortal. The gods may watch, the priests may pray, the advisors may counsel, but none can guarantee survival. Sometimes, in the silent hours of the night, he reflects on the irony. A pharaoh commands armies, governs cities, and performs rituals meant to appease eternity. And yet a single illness can bring it all to a halt. The most carefully constructed legacy, the most elaborately planned monuments, the entire network of influence and loyalty. All dependent on a body that is vulnerable, fragile, and fleeting. Even the greatest of pharaohs is at the mercy of fever, infection, and pain. And the palace, resplendent in gold and shadow, cannot shield him from the ultimate vulnerability, that his time may end long before the monuments are complete, long before the scrolls are inscribed, long before eternity can be claimed. Illness is a quiet teacher. It strips away illusion. It reminds the pharaoh that perfection is fleeting. That mortality cannot be hidden behind gold, ritual, or fear. And that even gods, or those who are believed to be gods, must contend with human fragility. As dawn creeps over the Nile, painting the palace in gold and shadow, the pharaoh rises again. He must continue to rule, to appear strong, to maintain the illusion of divinity. Yet beneath the robes, behind the crown, his body whispers a persistent truth: even kings are mortal, and even gods can feel pain. In the life of a pharaoh, the end is never far from the beginning. From the moment a child ascends the throne, the awareness of mortality is ingrained, not as a fear to be ignored, but as a responsibility to be meticulously prepared for. Even as a young ruler, he learns that death is not an interruption, it is a continuation. Life is measured not only in years, but in the legacy one leaves behind. Every decision, every action, every construction in the palace and across the kingdom is infused with the knowledge that it will one day outlast him. Preparations begin quietly, almost imperceptibly. He studies the rituals of the dead, the construction of tombs, and the preservation of the body. Priests instruct him in spells that are meant to guide the soul through the dangerous corridors of the afterlife. Advisors provide guidance on treasures, offerings, and monumental projects designed to secure eternity. The palace, though filled with life, already holds the whispers of his mortality. Death shapes daily routines. Meals are not only nourishment, they are offerings to sustain both the living and the divine presence that he will one day join. Clothing and adornments are chosen with care, both for appearance and for ritual significance. Even public appearances are calculated with an awareness that each portrayal of perfection is a rehearsal for eternity. The Pharaoh's study of death is not morbid, it is pragmatic. He learns the art of mummification, observing how embalmers treat the body, ensuring that flesh and bone will endure. He consults with priests on the recitation of spells and the placement of amulets. Each step is a preparation for a journey he must undertake alone, even as the kingdom around him thrives. He also plans the tomb, a sanctuary of gold, stone, and sacred knowledge. Every chamber, corridor, and chambered passage is meticulously designed, not only for preservation but for protection. It must be a fortress for the soul, impervious to time, tomb robbers, and decay. Each hieroglyph, each sculpture, each hidden compartment is a thread connecting mortality with eternity. Even leisure is touched by awareness of the end. Music, poetry, and storytelling serve as reminders of the fragility of life and the importance of legacy. Gardens, fountains, and art are created not only for beauty, but as eternal symbols that will carry the Pharaoh's name across generations. The psychological weight is immense. From the earliest years, the Pharaoh lives with the constant knowledge that his death is inevitable. Even as he commands armies, governs provinces, and performs sacred rituals, he is simultaneously preparing for a moment when all authority, all glory, all life will transition to another plane. This duality, life and death intertwined, is unlike any burden experienced by ordinary mortals. It cultivates a mindset of foresight, patience, and meticulous planning. Every action is measured not only by immediate consequence but by eternal significance, and yet, despite careful preparation, uncertainty always lingers. No amount of gold, ritual, or planning can guarantee immortality. The Nile may rise. The harvest may flourish, but disease, betrayal, or misfortune may still strike. It is this constant tension between meticulous preparation and uncontrollable fate that defines the Pharaoh's existence. Life becomes a rehearsal for death, and death becomes the ultimate measure of wisdom. Even relationships are influenced by mortality. Trust must be carefully allocated. Alliances are considered in terms of legacy. Family, advisors, and priests are not only companions in life but participants in a carefully orchestrated plan for the afterlife. Loyalty and devotion are currency, ensuring that when the time comes, the transition will be secure, and so, the Pharaoh walks the palace corridors with a quiet awareness that colors every thought, every decision, every breath. Gold, jewels, armies, and divine ceremonies are magnificent, but they are temporary. Only preparation for death is eternal. As night falls, he may sit alone in his private chambers, candles flickering against walls of gold and stone. Scrolls of spells, drawings of tombs, and sacred texts lie before him. His body rests, but his mind travels into eternity, planning, anticipating, rehearsing, because for a pharaoh, life and death are inseparable. The living world is a stage, and the afterlife is the final act, one that begins long before the curtain falls. Tomorrow, and every day after, he will continue this quiet, patient preparation. For in ancient Egypt, the measure of a pharaoh is not only in what he does while alive, but in how he ensures that his presence endures long after the last breath has passed. Even in life, the pharaoh is never truly free from the shadow of death. But in planning a tomb, he moves from abstract preparation to tangible immortality. Each stone, each corridor, each hidden chamber is carefully conceived, not merely as a resting place, but as a fortress of eternity. The construction begins long before the pharaoh's final breath. Architects, artisans, and laborious work under the guidance of advisors and priests to design a structure that will endure for millennia. The tomb is more than a building, it is a reflection of divine order, a sanctuary where the pharaoh's soul can navigate the perilous afterlife. Deep beneath the desert sands, work begins in silence. Enormous blocks of limestone and granite are carefully quarried, measured, and transported. The effort is immense, painstaking, and precise. Every detail, from the slope of a corridor to the placement of a false passage, is calculated to protect, to deceive, and to honor. The pharaoh supervises, sometimes personally reviewing plans, selecting chambers, and approving hieroglyphs. Each symbol etched into the walls carries layers of meaning, spells for protection, prayers for sustenance, declarations of power, and guidance for the journey beyond life. These inscriptions are more than art, they are essential tools, keys for the soul's passage through danger and judgment. Tombs are labyrinths, built not only to house the body but to confound those who would disturb it. Hidden chambers, false doors, and secret compartments create a maze designed to mislead thieves and preserve sacred treasures. Gold, jewels, and offerings are placed with care, for they are believed to nourish the soul and ensure a safe passage. The planning is meticulous. The pharaoh considers not only architecture but symbolism. The alignment of the tomb may correspond with celestial bodies. The arrangement of chambers may reflect religious cosmology. Even the smallest statue or amulet has a precise function, a role in guiding the soul safely into eternity. Laborious work under strict supervision, often in harsh conditions. Yet the pharaoh ensures that rituals accompany every act of construction. Offerings of incense, recitations of protective spells, and ceremonial acknowledgments accompany the heavy work. It is a delicate balance of human effort and divine invocation, a recognition that both labor and the favor of the gods are necessary for success. Psychologically, the tomb becomes a constant presence in the pharaoh's mind. As he walks the palace halls, he imagines the chambers beneath the sands. He envisions his body preserved, his treasures safeguarded, his soul guided through the afterlife. The knowledge of mortality is abstract during life, but here, in the shadows of future corridors, it becomes tangible. Even family and advisors are drawn into the process. They assist in the design, contribute resources, and oversee details, ensuring that the tomb will fulfill its sacred purpose. Loyalty and trust are tested. Mistakes are unacceptable. Flaws could imperil not only the pharaoh's journey but the stability of the kingdom itself. The construction of a tomb also reflects the pharaoh's personality, ambitions, and beliefs. A grand, intricate tomb may speak of obsession, confidence, or fear of mortality. A simpler structure may reveal humility or pragmatism. Yet every tomb, regardless of scale, is intended to transcend life itself. There is an eerie serenity to the process. Amid the dust, the chants, and the clang of stone, there is a quiet understanding. Life is fleeting, but these walls, these symbols, these carefully crafted spaces may endure forever. The pharaoh invests his essence into every corner, creating not just a tomb, but a bridge between the mortal world and eternity. And yet, even in this monumental work, tension lingers. Tomb robbers, natural decay, or divine disfavor could threaten his plans. Every precaution is taken, every spell recited, every chamber concealed, in the hope that death will not mark the end, but the continuation of influence, presence, and reverence, as the sun sets over the desert. The pharaoh may stand overlooking the construction, imagining the hidden labyrinth beneath the sands. He knows that each block laid, each inscription etched, each corridor built, is more than architecture. It is a testament to human ingenuity, devotion, and the unyielding desire to conquer death itself. The tomb is a mirror of life, immense, complex, and full of purpose, but it also embodies the inescapable truth: death approaches, patiently, inevitably, yet can be prepared for with infinite care. And as night falls, torches flickering against stone and sand, the pharaoh contemplates the final, most intimate journey of all. The one that awaits him beyond the living world. The moment of death is not an ending in ancient Egypt, it is a beginning. For the pharaoh, death is carefully orchestrated, a transition from mortal king to eternal presence. And at the heart of this transformation lies mummification, a ritual both sacred and meticulous, blending science, devotion, and the mysteries of the gods. The body, once alive and commanding armies, ruling cities, and performing sacred rituals, becomes a vessel for eternity. Embalmers, experts of anatomy, chemistry, and ritual, work with quiet precision. The organs are removed, preserved, and sometimes placed in canopic jars, each protected by a deity whose role is to safeguard the soul on its journey. The heart may be left intact, for it is the center of judgment in the afterlife. Natron, a naturally occurring salt, dries the body, removing moisture and ensuring preservation. Linen wrappings are layered with care, each bandage accompanied by spells and charms meant to shield, guide, and empower. Amulets are placed between layers, their symbolism and sacred power intended to protect the pharaoh from spiritual danger. The process is slow, deliberate, and laden with ritual. It is as much a spiritual act as a physical one, a bridge between life and what lies beyond. The soul, believed to comprise multiple parts, the Ka, the Ba, the Ark, must be preserved and guided. Priests recite incantations, invoking gods and ancestors, ensuring that each aspect of the pharaoh survives and can reunite in the afterlife. The preservation of flesh is inseparable from the protection of spirit. Without one, the other falters. Tombs, already constructed with careful attention to security and symbolism, are prepared to house the pharaoh for eternity. Chambers are stocked with treasures, food, and objects meant to sustain him beyond life. Each item carries purpose: gold to reflect divine light, statues to serve as companions, scrolls to guide him through trials in the duat, the perilous realm of the dead. But even in this careful orchestration, uncertainty remains. Tombs can be desecrated, rituals can fail, and divine favor is never guaranteed. The pharaoh's preparation is exhaustive because the afterlife is both perilous and eternal. Death is not a single event, it is a journey, fraught with judgment, danger, and tests of power, wisdom, and purity. The mummification process also reinforces the pharaoh's psychological reality. He has been trained for life with the constant awareness of mortality. Now, through the preservation of his body, he confronts it directly. The awareness of death shapes every decision, every act of devotion, every display of power. Even as the living world continues around him, it is a delicate balance of fear, reverence, and hope. The pharaoh's existence has always been a tightrope between divinity and humanity, authority and vulnerability. Mummification is the final, most intimate manifestation of this balance. It is a preparation not only for eternity but for legacy, a claim to immortality that defies time, decay, and oblivion. Even after the rituals conclude, the tomb sealed, the pharaoh's presence endures. The soul is believed to wander, protected and empowered, sustained by the spells, treasures, and structures crafted during life. The monuments, pyramids, and sacred texts continue to declare his divinity, even as centuries pass, yet the most haunting aspect is the tension between certainty and doubt. No pharaoh could be entirely assured of success. The afterlife was a perilous domain, and while rituals were precise and care exhaustive, the ultimate outcome remained hidden, known only to the gods. In this sense, the life of a pharaoh is defined by preparation, preparation for rule, preparation for war, preparation for death, and preparation for eternity. Each action, each ritual, each intricate plan is an attempt to assert control over forces far greater than oneself, mortality, fate, and time itself. As the final incense smoke curls into the silent corridors of the tomb, one cannot help but wonder. The pharaoh rests, preserved in linen and stone, surrounded by treasures, protected by prayers and spells. Yet is he truly eternal, or does death, in the quiet of eternity, remain an unyielding force, waiting to be confronted once more? In ancient Egypt, the answer is never absolute, and the mystery endures. This chapter leaves us with a profound reflection. Life, power, and divinity are intertwined, but mortality cannot be ignored. The pharaoh's meticulous preparations, his vast wealth, his divine status, all are acts of defiance against the inevitability of death, and as we close the story of the Pharaohs tonight, it makes one pause. To wonder about our own lives, our own mortality, and the legacies we leave behind. The journey through power, wealth, ritual, and mortality has ended for now, but the echo of the Pharaoh's world lingers. Even after the tomb is built, the body preserved, and the rituals completed, the Pharaoh's mind remains a kingdom of its own, a realm where the weight of eternity presses heavily on every thought. From the earliest years of his reign, the Pharaoh has been trained to live with mortality in mind. But as he ages, witnessing the slow passage of time, the deaths of advisors, generals, and even family, the awareness of eternity becomes almost tangible. It is not merely the fear of death, it is the relentless consciousness of living a life that will always be measured, remembered, and scrutinized long after the last breath has passed. The mind becomes a labyrinth. Every decision, every decree, every gesture is layered with meaning and consequence. Even in solitude, he imagines the judgment of gods and the perception of mortals. He contemplates whether his rule will endure as a legacy of wisdom or be remembered as a moment of human frailty. Each thought is heavy with moral, political, and spiritual significance. Sleep offers little reprieve. Dreams are vivid and often unsettling, a mixture of past deeds, future uncertainties, and imagined encounters with divine forces. He dreams of tombs half-finished, of armies lost to battle, of advisors plotting in shadows. Even in rest, the mind rehearses, anticipates, and judges itself. This constant mental vigilance is a paradox. The Pharaoh is God in the eyes of his people, yet he remains profoundly human, aware of flaws, of fear, of limits. Power cannot shield him from introspection, nor can gold or glory erase the relentless inner pressure of eternity. Every encounter with advisors, priests, and citizens carries invisible weight. Each conversation is analyzed not just for immediate implications, but for how it will ripple through the years. Even seemingly mundane decisions, how to allocate resources, whom to favor in court, which festival to emphasize, become points of psychological tension, weighed for both earthly impact and eternal memory. The pressure also extends to personal identity. Who is he beneath the crown and the divine persona? Is he the man he once was as a child, or has he become entirely defined by expectation, ritual, and public perception? The longer he rules, the more these questions gnaw at him. The Pharaoh becomes both the ruler the people expect and a prisoner of his own mind. Isolation compounds the burden. While surrounded by advisors, priests, and servants, true intimacy is nearly impossible. Confidants are limited, friendships are measured, trust is a scarce resource. The Pharaoh experiences solitude not only in body but in consciousness. He walks the palace halls surrounded by people, yet the deepest thoughts remain his alone, even when celebrating victories, performing rituals, or presiding over festivals. The awareness of eternity whispers in the background. Triumph is fleeting. Praise is temporary. The body will fail, the kingdom will endure only through others, and the divine status, while venerated, is ultimately symbolic. Yet, in this psychological tension, there is purpose. The awareness of eternity drives meticulous planning, devotion to ritual, and the construction of monumental works. The Pharaoh's obsession with legacy, with preservation, with divine alignment, all stem from the same inner pressure, a desire to transcend the ephemeral and touch eternity. The mind of a Pharaoh, in its quietest hours, is a battlefield. Memory, ambition, fear, and hope clash in silent conflict. Every action taken in life is rehearsed against the backdrop of what will endure, what will be remembered, what will be misinterpreted, and what will survive the sands of time. And yet, there is a subtle beauty in this burden. It sharpens perception, intensifies awareness, and deepens understanding of human mortality. The Pharaoh experiences the fleeting nature of life in its most profound form, embracing responsibility, consequence, and the delicate balance between divinity and humanity. As he sits alone in the palace chambers, the torches casting flickering shadows on walls of gold, he contemplates the paradox of existence, omnipotent in appearance, yet fragile in reality, eternal in ritual, yet mortal in flesh, revered by the living, yet ultimately alone with thoughts of eternity. the crown may be heavy, the throne may be secure, and the tomb may await, but the greatest weight of all rests in the mind, a mind that must reconcile the demands of a lifetime with the infinite stretch of time yet to come. In the silence of night, the Pharaoh realizes eternity is not only a destination, it is a constant companion, shaping life, decisions, and even sleep itself. The life of a pharaoh, draped in gold and bathed in ritual, exists in a world apart. Yet just beyond the palace walls, the rhythm of life continues for ordinary people, farmers tending the Nile, artisans crafting pottery, children chasing the wind across dusty streets. Their world is immediate, tangible, and full of the small, intimate concerns of daily survival. The pharaoh rises before sunrise, attended by dozens of servants, priests, and advisors. Every meal, every garment, every movement is orchestrated with precision and ritual significance. Even leisure is structured, each moment designed to uphold the illusion of divine perfection. In contrast, the common people wake to labor dictated not by ceremony, but by necessity. The farmer's day begins with the sun, the bread-maker's hands press dough with care, and the merchant counts coins that determine tomorrow's survival. Their time is their own, shaped by cycles of nature rather than divine expectation. Freedom for a commoner is subtle but real. They can speak, walk, and act with choices unmediated by endless ceremony. A farmer may decide which crops to plant, an artisan how to craft, a family how to celebrate, small decisions that shape the immediate world around them. The pharaoh, in contrast, must navigate every action through the lens of politics, ritual, and public perception. Every word spoken in the palace has consequence, every gesture observed by eyes that see more than the surface. Autonomy, for a pharaoh, is an illusion draped in authority. The contrast extends to human connection. Families of the common people share meals, laughter, and grief without the weight of scrutiny. The pharaoh, surrounded constantly by attendants and advisors, experiences connection as layered with expectation. Affection is measured, loyalty observed, intimacy filtered. Even familial bonds are entwined with politics and succession. Love and friendship exist, but only within invisible boundaries drawn by power and divinity. Work itself differs profoundly. The commoner labors to feed, shelter, and sustain life. Their toil is finite, cyclical, and tangible. The pharaoh's work is endless, abstract, and often invisible. Battles, ceremonies, laws, and tomb construction consume attention, leaving little room for the mundane satisfactions of daily life. Success is measured not in nourishment or creation, but in legacy, perception, and eternal impact, and yet, there is a quiet irony. While the commoner struggles with scarcity, disease, and unpredictability, the pharaoh's wealth and power cannot shield him from mortality, fear, or the relentless pressure of responsibility. Gold cannot cure illness, ceremony cannot prevent betrayal, and divine status cannot ease the isolation that pervades his existence. The greater the power, the greater the burden, and the smaller the illusion of freedom. In observing these parallel lives, one sees a striking reflection of human experience. The common people live with immediacy, impermanence, and simple joys, yet endure labor and scarcity. The pharaoh exists in grandeur, ritual, and perceived eternity, yet bears an invisible weight, psychological, political, and spiritual, that few can imagine. Even death is experienced differently. For ordinary people, mortality is abrupt and personal. Graves are modest, rituals brief, memories passed within families. For the pharaoh, death is elaborate, ritualized, and planned for decades. Every step is anticipated: mummification, tomb construction, prayers, and preservation for eternity. The pharaoh dies physically, yet his legacy, carefully curated, continues to influence the world for millennia. Yet despite all differences, the thread of humanity binds them. Both pharaoh and commoner laugh, fear, hope, and mourn. Both navigate uncertainty, confront mortality, and seek meaning in existence. The divergence lies in scale and consequence. One life touches a kingdom, the other touches the immediate circle of family and community. perhaps the most profound lesson lies in perspective. To the Pharaoh, life is a theater of eternity, yet lived in isolation and vigilance. To the common people, life is immediate and fragile, yet filled with connection, choice, and a tangible sense of freedom. Each world informs the other, contrasting power with intimacy, eternity with immediacy, divinity with humanity. In the quiet moments, the Pharaoh might imagine what it is like to live without constant observation, without endless expectation, without the invisible chains of ritual and responsibility. Likewise, the people may glance at the palace, seeing gold and grandeur, imagining freedom in power, unaware of the isolation it brings, and so, the two worlds coexist, one exalted and eternal, the other humble and fleeting. One governed by duty and divine expectation, the other by survival and simple joys. Both are human, both are real, and both are inescapably bound to the rhythm of life along the Nile. The contrast reminds us that power is not always freedom, and that the most privileged life can carry the heaviest burdens. And perhaps, in this reflection, we glimpse the hidden, quieter truths of existence, truths that no gold, crown, or pyramid can fully conceal. Time, even for a pharaoh, moves with an unrelenting rhythm. The sun rises and sets over the Nile, the seasons shift, and generations of advisors, soldiers, and servants come and go. And in this flow of eternity, the pharaoh grows older. Strength wanes, vision blurs, and even rituals once performed with effortless precision become laborious. In the final days, the palace feels different. Corridors that once echoed with the steady hum of advisors and priests now seem quieter, the air heavier. The pharaoh moves with measured care, aware that every gesture, every word, may be among the last he will ever perform. Servants watch silently, adjusting robes, fanning incense, preparing for the ceremonies that will mark the end of an era. Health, fragile even in youth, begins to fail. Fevers, pains, and the cumulative weight of decades of responsibility remind him that even divine status cannot grant immunity from the frailty of the body. Sleep comes in shallow fragments, punctuated by dreams of battles long fought, decisions long made, and corridors of tombs yet unseen. The pharaoh's mind, however, remains sharp. Decisions must still be made, succession carefully managed, laws reinforced, sacred rituals upheld. Even as the body tires, the awareness of legacy drives each action. Advisors are consulted with urgency, messages sent to distant governors, priests perform last rites to ensure divine favor. Every act becomes both practical and symbolic. A rehearsal for the inevitable transition from mortal rule to eternal memory. Visitors are few but significant. Family, trusted advisors, and distant rulers arrive to pay respects, to offer counsel, or to witness the last moments of one who has walked as both man and God. Conversations are measured, smiles are scarce. The pharaoh's presence alone commands attention, even in weakness. Every word carries weight, every glance is scrutinized. The palace itself seems to reflect this somber transition. Gardens once vibrant with color now feel like quiet observers. The Nile flows steadily, indifferent to the human drama unfolding beside its banks. Golden walls glimmer faintly in the fading light, yet even these treasures, symbols of divinity and power, cannot ward off the inevitability approaching. In private chambers, the pharaoh contemplates his life. Triumphs and failures, love and loss, battles and ceremonies, all swirl in memory. He understands that while the world has observed him as God, the truth of his existence is human, fleeting, vulnerable, and finite. Even immortality of legacy depends on mortal effort, and the weight of centuries presses quietly upon him. Preparations for death are precise. Mummification plans are finalized, tombs inspected, treasures arranged. Priests chant prayers meant to guide the soul safely into the duat. The pharaoh participates in each ritual with quiet solemnity, aware that his body and spirit must be prepared for eternity, and yet, even in these final moments, uncertainty lingers. Will the journey beyond life be as he has envisioned? Will the afterlife honor the meticulous care he invested in preserving both body and soul? The unknown stretches before him, infinite and silent, reminding even a god-king that some mysteries cannot be mastered. Despite this uncertainty, there is a strange serenity. The pharaoh has fulfilled his duties, both to the people and to the divine order. He has lived a life measured by ritual, power, and constant vigilance. And now, in the quiet final hours, he allows himself a moment of reflection, a pause between life and what lies beyond. The final days are also a testament to human resilience. Even as the body weakens, the mind retains clarity. Even as time closes in, legacy endures. Every decision, every monument, every inscription, and every act of governance has been a preparation for this ultimate passage. As the sun dips below the horizon, casting long shadows across the palace, the pharaoh sits alone. Torches flicker, casting moving patterns on the walls. The Nile murmurs softly outside. He feels both the weight of a life fully lived and the quiet pull of what is yet to come. He knows that soon, the world will continue without him, yet his presence, carefully preserved in monuments, tombs, and memory, will linger. Eternity awaits, but for this brief, final moment, he simply exists, fully human, fully aware, fully present. In the end, the pharaoh's last days are a meditation on power, mortality, and legacy. Gold cannot protect against time, ritual cannot fully tame death, and even divinity is measured by the impermanence of flesh. The final breath is inevitable, but the echo of a life, the weight of authority, the imprint of decisions, the reach of legacy remains. Death, in the world of the pharaohs, is not an end. It is a transition, a passage from the mortal realm into a domain governed by gods, spirits, and the intricate laws of eternity. And for the pharaoh, whose life has been meticulously orchestrated around the inevitability of mortality, this transition is as precise and deliberate as every act of rule he performed while alive. The moment the pharaoh breathes his last, a profound stillness envelops the palace. Guards stand silently, attendants bow their heads, and priests murmur sacred prayers. The air seems to thicken, carrying both sorrow and reverence, as if the very walls of the palace recognize the passing of one who was both human and divine. Immediately, the rituals begin. The body is carefully washed and anointed, oils infused with fragrances believed to purify and protect. Linen wrappings are applied, layer upon layer, each accompanied by incantations designed to shield the soul, preserve the flesh, and ensure safe passage to the afterlife. Amulets, charms, and sacred texts are placed meticulously, each imbued with magical and spiritual significance. The priests take the lead in invoking the gods. They recite spells that guide the pharaoh through the duat, the perilous realm between life and the afterlife. These words, ancient and precise, are believed to protect him from malevolent spirits, treacherous obstacles, and divine judgment. Every syllable, every gesture, every symbolic action is calculated to guarantee success in the journey ahead. Meanwhile, outside the inner chambers, the kingdom mourns. Citizens gather along the Nile, lighting candles and offering prayers. Soldiers form ceremonial lines, their spears and shields reflecting torchlight in solemn unison. The pharaoh's advisors and family observe with quiet grief, their hearts heavy with the loss of both ruler and god. Yet all acknowledge that death is not the conclusion of power, it is merely its transformation. The tomb, constructed with painstaking care over decades, becomes the stage for this ultimate transition. Chambers are filled with treasures, foods, and objects intended to sustain him in the afterlife. Hieroglyphs inscribed on the walls serve as guides, mapping his journey, invoking protection, and reminding the gods of his devotion and authority. Every object, every inscription, every carefully hidden chamber is designed to preserve life beyond life. The pharaoh's soul, believed to be composed of multiple parts, the Ka, the Ba, and the Ark, must reunite. The Ka, the life force, lingers near the tomb. The Ba, the personality or essence, journeys through the duat, and the Ark, the eternal self, seeks union with the divine. Through ritual, magic, and precision, the priests orchestrate this reunion, attempting to guarantee the pharaoh's place among the eternal, yet uncertainty remains. no matter how meticulously the rituals are performed, the journey beyond is filled with unknowns. Will the gates of the afterlife open smoothly? Will hostile spirits challenge him? Will the gods deem him worthy of eternal peace? The pharaoh's life may have been one of absolute control, but death introduces forces beyond even his divine authority. The procession into the tomb is solemn and silent. Torches flicker against walls of stone, casting elongated shadows that seem to dance in anticipation. Music, soft and mournful, accompanies the march, blending the sacred and the earthly. Family, priests, and trusted servants move in reverent rhythm, aware that they are witnessing the final act of a life that shaped a civilization. Once the tomb is sealed, the pharaoh's mortal presence becomes history. Yet the rituals, treasures, and inscriptions serve as vessels, carrying his essence, guiding his spirit, and asserting his continuity beyond the temporal world. To the living, the body lies still. To the dead, the journey continues, traversing shadowy corridors, divine halls, and the unseen plains of eternity. The people return to their lives, the Nile flows as always, and the palace settles into quiet. But the echo of the pharaoh's existence persists, embedded in monuments, tombs, and memories. Death has claimed the body, but legacy, influence, and the carefully curated presence of divinity endure. This moment reminds us of the delicate balance between mortality and immortality. The pharaoh, once a living god, now embarks on the most mysterious journey of all. His life has ended, yet his story continues, intertwined with the eternal, whispered in hieroglyphs, and preserved by the rituals and monuments he spent a lifetime perfecting. And in this quiet, eternal pause, one can almost feel the weight of human ambition, devotion, and fear. A reminder that while life is finite, the desire to endure, to be remembered, and to transcend mortality is timeless. The life of a pharaoh is a world apart, an existence wrapped in gold, shadowed by enormous responsibility, and intertwined with the eternal. Towers of stone, treasures beyond measure, and ceremonies that echo through time, they speak of power and divinity. Yet, when the torches are extinguished and the palace falls silent, the question remains, was this life truly powerful? For all the grandeur, the wealth, and the divine status, the pharaoh's life was bound by constraints invisible to the outside world. Every step, every gesture, every thought was observed, scrutinized, and filtered through the lens of expectation. Freedom was a delicate illusion, constantly challenged by the demands of ritual, the scrutiny of advisors, and the ever-present threat of betrayal. Even the mightiest ruler walked on a tightrope suspended between authority and vulnerability. He commanded armies, ruled cities, and was worshipped as a god. Yet, he feared assassination, illness, and the judgment of both gods and men. His greatest accomplishments required the most human of efforts: vigilance, discipline, foresight, and constant introspection. The power he wielded was inseparable from the pressure it demanded. Life for the pharaoh was a paradox. He was immortal in symbolism yet fragile in flesh. Divine in perception, human in experience. He shaped civilizations, yet his body was subject to disease. His mind burdened by anxiety, and his heart weighed with solitude. Power, in this context, was less a gift and more a responsibility, a continuous negotiation with mortality, duty, and expectation. Perhaps the truest power of a pharaoh lay not in conquest or wealth, but in preparation for death, for the afterlife, and for the legacy that would follow. Every tomb, every ritual, every hieroglyph etched into stone was a statement of intention, to transcend time, to preserve influence, and to assert presence even after the body was gone. In this sense, the pharaoh's life was a relentless meditation on eternity itself, yet, despite meticulous planning, life and death remained unpredictable. No treasure could fully secure the soul, no ritual could guarantee eternal favor, and no crown could shield against the solitude that accompanied supreme authority. Power, in its grandest form, was inseparable from human vulnerability, and perhaps that is the quiet lesson left behind by the pharaohs. True power is not measured solely in wealth, monuments, or fear inspired in others. It is also measured by how one navigates the invisible pressures, the burdens of expectation, and the fragile nature of existence itself. It is the balance between ambition and mortality, authority and introspection, divinity and humanity. As night falls over the Nile, the golden temples and pyramids bathed in moonlight, the story of the pharaohs settles into quiet reflection. Their lives, extraordinary yet human, remind us that grandeur comes with weight, that eternity is intertwined with mortality, and that the most powerful moments are often those hidden behind the visible splendor of life. So now, as we leave the world of pharaohs behind, let us carry a calm understanding of their existence, the beauty, the pressure, the isolation, and the profound pursuit of immortality. A life of power is magnificent, yes, but it is also deeply human, full of fragility, responsibility, and quiet reflection. Good night. May the quiet of history, the whispers of the past, and the gentle flow of the Nile accompany you into rest, and may your dreams wander through the mysterious and timeless world of the pharaohs.